Good Thursday evening, Midlands. I'm Chief Meteorologist Efren Afante with your now Hurricane Ian update. This was updated from the National Hurricane Center about 5 o'clock this afternoon. Wind sustained as a hurricane now, 75 miles an hour. It has been gusting up to 90. It's offshore just east of Daytona Beach. It's about 240 miles south of Charleston. Winds, the direction is moving generally to the north-northeast at about 10 miles an hour. Pressure has dropped to 986. So over the last several hours from early this morning to this evening, as it made its way off the coast of Florida, it started to intensify not only in pressure but in wind strength. And that Category 1 now has the track from the National Hurricane Center to stay as a Category 1 hurricane, potentially up to sustained winds of 80 miles an hour as it makes its way through the southeast Atlantic coastline. The projection right now from the National Hurricane Center is that it is going to make landfall potentially as still a Category 1 hurricane with 80 mile an hour winds. Its trajectory may show it's going to make landfall somewhere around the Isle of Palms, but the deviation of where it may fall could be anywhere close to Edisto Beach to as far north as Myrtle Beach. Now this is going to be Friday afternoon. As we go through Friday evening, it will then make its way through possibly the eastern Midlands or the eastern portions of the PD before Saturday morning gets into the areas right around the PD-Piedmont state line. Now, what we've been noticing is that the spaghetti models have been continuing to indicate a continual shift to the east. And between 2 and 5 o'clock this afternoon, most of these models were at least more towards Hilton Head Island. Now it puts it right in the area as projected by the National Hurricane Center between Charleston and Horry County at some point Friday midday to early afternoon. The one thing that we are watching very carefully, though, is what is going to be the impact if it covers this area, regardless of whether it goes left or right of this center line. Well, we already know that there's a likelihood of storm surge. There's a storm surge warning for the entire coastline of South Carolina. This puts a projection about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you notice, the winds are now coming out of the north-northwest as it comes over the low country, but spins right back around in quite a bit of intensity in the areas from Georgetown and Horry County coastline. And that is going to be what is going to be the worry, at least for the coastline, because the projections now from Hilton Head all the way up to Kiowa Island, the inundation could be anywhere from 3 to possibly over 6 feet of storm surge pushing well inland, especially in the areas of the low country. As we get into the areas from Kiowa all the way up to McClellanville, the better possibility of at least 6, if not more, feet of storm surge pushing right through. So you're talking about all the way and well west of number 17, the Intercoastal Highway, going all the way up to McClellanville. Then you get to the areas from Georgetown to Pawleys Island and Myrtle Beach. Notice it's not showing that much inundation. Still, from the Salt River all the way up to Murrells Inlet, you're still talking about the possibility of 6 feet storm surge pushing through. If the track holds steady and it makes landfall somewhere in this general area, then you're still talking about from Pawleys Island all the way up to North Myrtle Beach, instead of maybe up to 3 feet, possibly even more like 6 feet storm surge pushing well inland. They have a hurricane warning for the entire coastal and coastal inland portions of our South Carolina coastline. This is in effect until Sunday afternoon. A tropical storm warning is in effect for the rest of South Carolina, but not including the upstate. So here in the Midlands, we're looking at tropical storm force winds possible through Sunday at 2 o'clock. Here's the probability scale. This is depicting the likelihood of at least sustained 40 mile an hour winds when it starts coming towards South Carolina and even afterwards going into Saturday night. The very likelihood that 40 to 50 mile an hour sustained winds along the coastline and portions inland. Then when we get to portions of the PD through the areas of the eastern Midlands along and east of I-95, very likely we'll have 40 mile an hour sustained winds, and this will be the likelihood as we're going from Friday morning all the way through Saturday night. there's still a higher chance we get into the central portions of our midland communities. And then as you go further west, especially into areas of Saluda and western portions of Aiken County and Edgefield counties, the probability drops. However, that does not mean you won't get 40-mile-an-hour winds. The probability of it continuing is not likely, but don't let that fool you. We are going to be experiencing 40-mile-an-hour winds at one point or another in the western Midlands, a good amount of time in the central Midlands, and very likely for a substantial amount of time in our eastern Midland communities, all the way down to the South Carolina shores. We're also looking at the possibility of heavy rainfall starting tomorrow. Now, there is a marginal risk from the PD all the way down to the low country, pretty much along I-95 and points east. That heavy rainfall is possible. A better chance of a torrential rainfall along the coastline of South Carolina from the Grand Strand down to the low country. From Friday night into Saturday, all that changes. We're looking at substantially heavy rainfall in the tune of anywhere total when it's done between 3 and 5 inches of rainfall. Localized areas could get up to 7 inches of rainfall in the red area. So for the Midlands, pretty much in the western portion, so Saluda, Aiken, southern Lexington, and Edgefield, could have heavy rainfall. That's where we're looking at maybe the possibility of 3 to 4 inches of rainfall. But from Fairfield, Richland, eastern Lexington, Calhoun, central, eastern Orangeburg, and everything to the east, for the Midlands specifically, again, we could be looking at upwards of 5 to 6 inches of rainfall. Localized areas could receive 7 inches total. Now, what we're expecting is that the rain will start sometime overnight tonight, give or take an hour or two from midnight. But once the rain starts pushing through, notice all the heavy rainfall is now coming onshore in the low country in the Grand Strand. And by the time we get up in the morning, a good portion of the Midlands and everything east of that to the coast is going to be dealing with torrential rainfall and ongoing continuous rainfall. And as that moves through, notice the position that our in-house model is showing is somewhere in the area of Georgetown or Horry County coastal. And as that moves through, the heavy rainfall continues by midday going into the early afternoon. This model is indicating that as we get into the late afternoon, early evening, the position of Ian is going to start falling apart along the Grand Strand and the PD, and we could get a break. And as the torrential rain starts tapering off by Friday evening, we may possibly have no more rainfall as we get into early Saturday morning. But nevertheless, that's the reason why the National Weather Service in Wilmington, North Carolina, in Charleston, as well as in Columbia, have issued a flood watch for pretty much the eastern 2/3 of the Palmetto State through Saturday morning. This may be extended into Saturday night since we're still expecting more heavy rainfall to continue. But again, with the amount of rainfall that we're getting, anywhere from 3 to 7 inches of rainfall is going to be confined within no wider than 36 hours. So the flooding possibility is likely in many areas in which flash flooding could occur pretty much at any time after daybreak tomorrow morning through, conservatively, midnight as we get into early Saturday morning. The take-home message is hurricane warning still remain in effect for the entire South Carolina coastline. A tropical storm warning is in effect for the PD, the Midlands, the CSRA, and portions of the Low Country until Sunday morning, with the likelihood of landfall sometime tomorrow afternoon as a potential Category 1 hurricane with winds of over or possibly up to 80 miles an hour. We're going to be watching this very carefully. The National Hurricane Center will come up with an update at 8 o'clock. They'll come up with a graphical update on the trajectory of where Ian is going to be heading to by 11 o'clock. And we are hoping that this will show not so much as a Category 1 hurricane, but maybe down to a tropical storm. And with any luck, this will continue to shift a little bit more further east. Again, that'll be at 11 o'clock tonight. We'll have that update on News 19 at 11 p.m. tonight, Thursday, as well as information online on WLTX.com. I'm Chief Meteorologist Efren Afante, and we'll see you tonight on News 19 at 11.